Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the Chadds Ford itself. Now, I haven't really gone into this too much, but we're going to go into it. Basically, Chadds Ford was a Ford just like all the other Fords along the Brandywine. Now, the Ford was located, if you notice where Route 1 is today, it would have been a covered bridge a while ago. It also would have been a common structure that you see today. It's a Pennsylvania Turnpike, a bridge that was probably built in the 30s or 40s across there. That's not where the Ford would have been. The Ford is right further down. Okay, what we have above us, I just wanted to show you off to my my right here is an abutment of a train bridge. I think it's the Baltimore Railroad that's above us. This railroad was put in basically to go across the Brandywine. But we're going to look at the original Chadds Ford, where the Ford went into the creek and then went across the creek. You see where that island is in the distance, down in that area there. As I was saying, down at Piles Ford, they put an island in. Basically, it was so it would be easier to cross. As you can see, this is the main branch of the Brandywine. It's pretty wide, and they had to ford this. Now, what they had to do was basically just throw rocks in the middle and make an island, make an area where they could come across one side easily, get onto the island, and then go across the other way easily. That was done right here, and it still exists today. You can still see some portion of that island. Now that's where the original Chadds Ford would have been. There would be troops stationed on either side of that. And there was guns. Howe's guns are off to my, let's see, it would be my west. And then the American guns were at Chadds Ford just a little bit to my north. And this is where they would have crossed. This is where the baggage would have crossed. This is where the provisions would have crossed. And also the cannons, when they took the Ford, everything would have come across this Ford right here. Now, another aspect is that there was two crossings at Chadds Ford, just not one. This one would have been used by the locals. It was a cart path. The locals would have came across here, and there was basically mills in the area at that time. Now, they would use what would be called a run. A run was a creek, a very narrow creek, about 5 feet wide, where the Brandywine would empty into. They would dig these. They were like little canals, and they would put their mill alongside these and have their water wheel. It was powered from that little run. Now Harvey's Run is right behind me. Now this is where the mills would have been during the battle. They knew that they were here. The inhabitants here would have left the mills, and they were basically probably used as structures for positions for artillerists. There were lookout points, but there were structures along here. It just wasn't farmland. There was definitely things here. Now they were owned by locals in the area. Washington's headquarters, the gentleman that lived there owned that mill. He owned it. Was I think it was basically a grist mill, and there was to be a sawmill here. That was right down off of Harvey's Run. Now, some history about exactly where we're standing. This embankment or abutment right here, we're at the Brandywine Conservatory right now, a little bit behind it. This abutment, when it was being dug, probably in the early part of around 1890s, possibly around 1900. I'm sorry, it goes back further than that. Probably around the 1840s or 1850s, 60s, in that time frame. Not really sure, but when this was being dug, a German soldier's bones were found here. They had to stop. They came in, they looked at them, they didn't want to disturb the grave. What they found is they found basically a brass plate. Now this plate would have been worn across on their sword belt, or it would have been an ammunition box plate. And what it said the regiment number. It would have had their number on the brass. It would have been polished at the time they found that. And also they found pewter buttons. A lot of these buttons on their uniforms would have been pewter. Now they would have had their insignia on them. It would have said 44th, 42nd, 40th, or any type of regiment like that. Now that's good for us today because we can identify different people that were at battles and people that were generally in the area. Because of these buttons and because of their regiment numbers, we know a lot about the battle. We know who was here. Now the soldier that was found here would have been looked at probably by local people. There wasn't too many people, but they had to stop construction. They found a bullet. They said that they found the ball that killed him. It was among his ribs. It was right here. They found his buttons. They found his belt or sword belt, and they found the bullet. And he was buried here. Most likely it was a German Hessian. Hessians were in this area also. They don't know who, I don't think there's no accounts of exactly who it was, but it was definitely on the British side. Now, accounts of this could be possible anywhere in this area. Where we're standing, they just buried the dead where they fell. They didn't take them to an area. If they were dead, they were dead. They didn't have nothing else to do with the dead. If they were wounded or they were injured, they took them to hospitals or outside areas. But the dead, why put dead on wagons and take up space where you could put the injured or the sick in the wagon? They buried them where they lay. Now, all along the Brandywine are soldiers. There's some accounts of people coming down here making stories about ghosts and people where they're buried. But technically, we don't know. There's no accounts. The British were in this area after the battle. The inhabitants would have left with the army. They were afraid, and nobody else would be here but the British to bury their dead. So we don't know where these dead are today. But in back of me is the original Chad's Ford. This is where the army would have crossed, most likely, probably late in the afternoon on September 11, 1777. The British would have crossed this area.